Yeah. I don't like that. It's rushed. I don't like it. Anything that's rushed, that's not good. You want to make
This session.
Do I need to pass this now?
Yeah. Nice tie.
Holy cow!
I know
No
it's
chest hair.
He's got a tie on. I've never ever seen him.
Looking sharp, man.
A couple weeks you keep doing that, nobody will say a word. No, I got jeans. They don't fit. Hey, after 2 weeks, nobody will say a word. You have to do it for 2 weeks, though. Nobody will say a word after that. Just takes 2 weeks. Anyway.
Don't look up, dog.
Yeah.
What's up?
Not the dogs.
Oh,
Yeah.
Week from tomorrow.
American.
Fireworks, you're gonna do what?
It's just been too fast. It's dropped on us too fast.
Uh-huh. Yep.
I moved the new city, but not West Oregon, or not West Oregon, quite close. Yeah, it's already here, but
Des Moines what? Benton, I thought. West.
West.
Kevin and I and Jody.
I think it's Benton.
Kevin did a real nice job. We don't have a plan. We have had this discussion. First thing you choose. First Jody got his
oh, Lord. Oh, I'm just going to mention 3 of them. Okay. I like hiding it.
I kind of thought everybody was going to that was just going to stay home.
Yes, you.
That is actually more than Katrina out. So that's how it's like that. There's a lot of great creatures on the line.
But now they're setting them off. They eat it the whole damn month.
But we can say that they it's better.
Absolutely did.
Stop it.
Yeah.
So
No, I I think he does a good point. Maybe we can restrict it, but that's going kind of contrary to the county.
Nice.
Well, I agree with you. You gonna bring that up?
I'm going to.
Good. So Joni would have to draft it so that
Just has to amend it.
That's nice.
Yeah. 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 Or in December.
Yeah.
I can't see.
You need them pictures back. You need them pictures back.
I don't even know who's it were.
He does those pictures.
Nope.
And whereas I was sympathetic to that first case, especially if the people that got up there, this is a family member, and not feeling this stuff. I don't know.
Mark, Mark let me read the report. I'm the same way you are. That was my grandson. And I think they took.
Good evening. It is 5:30, so we're going to call the regular council meeting to order. I'd remind you to turn your cell phones to silent or vibrate, and then I'd ask the audience to stand and do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Amanda, would you take the roll, please?
Councilmember Strebe,
Here.
Councilmember Dalby,
Here.
Councilmember Myers,
Here.
Councilmember Rowe,
Here.
Councilmember Stevens,
Here.
Mayor Lazio.
Here.
Items on the consent agenda. Minutes from special meeting number 13 on April 26th, regular meeting number 14 on May 2nd, and special meeting number 15 on May 8th, 2017 is presented. Acknowledge April financial statement and payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Mayor's proclamation of the month of May 2017 as Historic Preservation Month. Set June 6, 2017 as the date for a public hearing on the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the beach renovations Phase 2 project 2017. Reallocation of CIP funding in the amount of $5,000 for campground shower house roof. Resolution number 100, 2017, approving a grant agreement of $25,000 to Regional Economic Development Investments Incorporated. Resolution number 116, 2017, approving the city's wellness program Healthy Choice Services agreement to be provided by the Ottumwa Regional Health Center, effective upon approval. Resolution number 120, 2017, setting May 30th, 2017 as the date for a public hearing on the disposition of city-owned property located at 413 North Pocahontas. Beer and or liquor applications for Ottumwa Elks Lodge number 347, temporary outdoor service area, June 21st through 25th at the Jimmy Jones Shelter. Ottumwa Fly-In, temporary outdoor service area on August 25th through 29th, 2017 at 14802 Terminal Avenue. Main Street Ottumwa, 6-month outdoor service area on the 100, 200, and 300 block of East Main. Uncle Buck's Bar and Grill, 518 Church Street, temporary outdoor service area on June 10th. Annapolis Rapids, 332 East Main Street, temporary outdoor service area, July 1st, 2017. All applications pending final inspections.
Move the consent agenda as presented.
Second. Thank you.
Councilmember Strebe,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby,
Yes.
Councilmember Myers,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Item C in our agenda, we need approval for tonight's agenda. Is there a motion? Move the approval of tonight's agenda.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Strebe,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby,
Yes.
Councilmember Myers,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to call on City Administrator Andy Morris to give us an update on some of his activities.
Thank you, Mayor. There actually is one item listed. I have two other items to add. First of all, the very first item you see is the goal setting, strategic planning, quarterly update, just to acknowledge when we had the goal setting session. Jeff Shaw at the University of Iowa, the Institute of Public Policy, the council agreed to set 6 specific strategic goals. I'm not going to go through all of them. I do have the quarterly report update. If anyone from the news media would like to see this in terms of how we are along in the benchmarking of those particular 6 goals, I'll be more than happy to provide that to anyone that asks. A reminder, the Solid Waste Committee meeting, that is tomorrow in room 108 downstairs, and that is at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock. The last item, Mayor and Council, I'd like to point out, staff would like to have a special meeting on the 30th, the last Tuesday of the month, and the purpose of that meeting would be to award construction contracts for the roundabouts at Richmond and Ferry and also Johnson Avenue. In addition to that, also set a public hearing for reconstruction of Orchard Street. If you have any further questions on the last 2 items, Mr. Seals is here if you have any questions for him, but again, would like to clean those up and have that meeting on the 30th, if it's all right with council.
Any questions,
What's the
Brandon?
Orchard Street. You said something about Orchard Street?
No, if I did, I may have spoke out of turn. Richmond and Ferry is going to be the roundabouts. And then the second one, the second item is reconstruction of Osage Street.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. Item E in our agenda, if there's anyone in the audience that wants to address an item on the agenda, we have one filled out form. If there's anyone else, fill out a form, please, and we'll get it to the city clerk. Okay, let's move to item F, department recommendations. Amanda?
Bid review and contract award for the asbestos removal at 2801 Romer Avenue. Recommendation, award the contract to Dan Larson Excavating, doing business as Asbestos Abatement and Inspections of Iowa, for a cost of $15,400.
Good evening, Jody. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Oh, we better have a motion to accept the recommendation.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead.
We accepted bids for the asbestos removal at 2801 Romer until April 25th, and we received 2 bids for this project, and Dan Larson was the best bid, so staff recommends awarding him the contract. On this project, the DNR is going to pay 50% of the cost of the asbestos removal, so they will pay $7,700, and the project's going to begin after July 1st. And then once the asbestos is removed, we're going to offer the property for sale by way of a development agreement.
Are there any questions for Jody? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.
Lease agreements for high school and American Legion. Recommendation, approve the lease agreement and authorize the mayor to sign.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Good evening, Gene. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. At their meeting on May 9th, 2017, the Ottumwa Parks Advisory Board approved the lease agreements for the high school and the American Legion baseball. These teams share the American Legion baseball diamond, and these lease agreements are for 1 year in length and will begin on April 1st, 2017.
Any questions for Gene? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you, Gene. Thanks for getting that work done.
Bid report rejecting bids on East Main Jefferson Divine Reconstruction Project. Recommendation, reject all bids.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Good evening, Larry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The Iowa DOT accepted bids on behalf of City of Ottumwa on April 18th, 2017 at 10 a.m. We received 1 bid from Iowa Civil Contracting, which was substantially over the engineer's opinion of probable cost. Under the DOT bidding process, we are not allowed to engage in discussions with the potential contractor, but either need to reject all bids or start the award process. We listed what the bid amount was, what the engineer's estimate was, and the funding sources. We were able to talk to some of the contractors that pulled plans but did not bid. That doesn't violate the process. One of their biggest concerns was the very short working time that we put on each phase. Of course, that was done in coordination with the DOT. So that's one of the things that we would look at when we go to relet. And the other comments were the timing of the year. So our plan would be to come back and bid it with a late start date of next, probably March, end of March, allowing an early start date earlier than that.
Have you notified the owners along that line?
Letter has went out that we're going to reject bids and delay the bidding.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the disposition of city-owned property located at 158 South Fellows. I received no objections on this item.
Jody, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The city received an offer from Robert and Barbara Wilson of $250 for the purchase of a vacant lot at 158 South Fellows, and they want to use the property as green space for their house next door. Staff recommends accepting this offer.
This is a public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience that wants to address this particular item. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 96, 2017, accepting the offer and approving the sale of city-owned property located at 158 South Fellows to Robert and Barbara Wilson for the sum of $250. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 96, 2017.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Any questions for Jody?
Your Honor, I have a question.
Go ahead, Matt.
And Jody, this doesn't pertain to this one issue here or this sale. I know we do this a lot. And we require when this happens, the owners to submit their plans for the use of this extra lot. Is that correct?
As part of their purchase offer, they put on that purchase offer what they want to do with the property.
Does that mean that in the future, if they wanted to, say, extend a garage or to, enhance their property without it being green space, would they be still able to do that?
Certainly. All they
Okay.
would have to do is submit
Resubmit.
building plans to the departments or
Okay.
something like that.
It's a question I've had for a while. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the disposition of city-owned property located at 706 Wabash. I received no objections on this item.
Jody?
Thank you, Mayor. If this one sounds familiar, it is. This is a do-over because we did not have the public hearing notice published in the Courier. So Ottumwa Habitat for Humanity submitted an offer of $125 for the purchase of the lot at 706 Wabash. They want to build a house on that property, and staff recommends accepting their offer.
This also is a public hearing. If there's anyone that wants to address this item. Seeing none, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close.
Second.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 111, 2017, accepting the offer and approving the sale of city-owned property located at 706 Wabash to Ottumwa Habitat for Humanity for the sum of $125 is what it should be. There's a typo on the agenda. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 111, 2017.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Any questions for Jody? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the disposition of city-owned property described as Lot 52 in Eastview Subdivision Number 2. I received no objections on this item.
Go ahead, Jody.
This one is the sale of a vacant lot next to David and Joan Wise, and they've offered the city $125 for the property. They have a house next door, and they want to use this property as green space.
This also is a public hearing. If there's anybody that wants to address this item. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing. So move.
Second.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 112, 2017, accepting the offer and approving the sale of city-owned property described as Lot 52 in Eastview Subdivision Number 2 to David and Joan Wise for the sum of $125. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 112, 2017.
Move the recommendation as presented. Second.
Any questions for Jody? Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Catch Basin Replacement Program 2017. I received no objections on this item.
Go ahead, Larry.
This is our annual catch basin project, and we'll reconstruct and raise catch basin wells with new grates as indicated on the plans and specifications. Basins are located on various streets located within the city of Ottumwa. Bids will be received and opened by the city of Ottumwa on May 31st, 2017 at 2 p.m. And a bid report and bid award recommendation will be presented to the city council meeting on June 6th, or at a later date as determined by staff. Annually, we budget $50,000 from the sewer fund to perform this work.
This also is a public hearing. If there's anybody that wants to address this item. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 114, 2017, approving the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Catch Basin Replacement Program 2017. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 114, 2017.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second. Thank you. Any questions for Larry? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and dates are set for a public hearing on the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Asphalt Street Repair Program 2017. I received no objections on this item.
Go ahead, Larry.
This project is for our annual asphalt street repair program, which started in 2003. It is used to set unit price cost. The work will consist of overlay on various streets in the city. Staff has reviewed the sewer condition and the ADA requirements for each of the streets listed below. Bids will be received and opened by the city of Ottumwa on May 31st, 2017 at 2 p.m. and a bid report and a bid award recommendation will be presented at the city council meeting June 6, 2017, or at a later date as determined by staff. I've listed the streets to read them out: 4th Street, Washington Market, Birch Drive, Pike to the previous patch that we did, Locust Street, Alta Vista, Hawthorne, and Grandview. And as usual on this, what we do is we come through after all the work is done because we really never know exactly how much patching and additional work will be encountered after we mill the streets. But we will come back to council for kind of the second round that we've done for quite a few years now. We know that another item that will be added to this will be the cemetery roads, which is budgeted under the Jeans Department.
This too is a public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience that wants to address this item. Seeing none, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 115, 2017, approving the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Asphalt Street Repair Program 2017. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 115, 2017.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented. Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Larry? Let's take the vote and then I'll have a question for you. Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
I I know this isn't on the agenda per se, but in talking with you earlier, Larry, you indicated that we'd spent in the neighborhood of $15 million on street repair and reconstruction in the past 4 to 5 years. I just think that's a figure that we don't share with the public very much. And your comments about how much it would take for us to do more than that if we had unlimited money. Could we keep up with our streets?
Well, these numbers go back quite a few years. We would have had to be doing approximately $8 million a year in order to catch up in 20 years. And we've always been under probably about half.
I just think that's a important figure that council have in their head, that we do $3 to $4 million and given year. And it's just hard to keep up with all the streets. And I think people that have traveled find out that other cities have the same problem. It's not unique to Ottumwa.
Well, the other thing that everyone needs to be aware of is streets have a definite life cycle. Asphalt streets, for instance, could be a 20-year replacement for at least the surface mat. Streets, you'd like to think you'd get PCC streets 30 to 40 years on your design. So they have to be replaced, and that's the problem. As you're replacing them, the other ones are aging.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Larry.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the appeal by Cale and David Rowland regarding the removal of a dog from city limits. We received the petition for the appeal.
Okay. Good evening, Chief. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is an appeal on the behalf of the owner of the dog that bit a dog. Just a quick rundown. On April 24, 2017, a boxer named Poochie pursued and bit a 12-year-old boy in the backyard of 516 Benton Street here in Ottumwa. These bites caused serious injury, requiring several stitches to both arms. This incident was done without provocation. I believe the owner of the dog here and the victim's father are here. I've got a couple pictures of the injuries that were sustained by the victim. This is to one of the arms of the 12-year-old boy. Can you do number 2 for me, please? This is the injury to the other arm caused by the dog. Mr. Robert Miller is here. Do I have your permission to show your son's injuries with his face? The next picture is just an overall picture of the boy at the hospital with the injuries, so you have an idea of what the extent of the injuries are. Okay, thank you. By the city ordinance, this dog is now considered a vicious animal as defined by Section 7.1 of the Ottumwa Municipal Code. That code defines a vicious animal, a dog, cat, or other animal that exhibits a propensity to attack or bite persons without provocation, or has attacked, bitten, maimed, or killed any domestic animal without provocation. Under Section 7.11, it addresses keeping or harboring these vicious animals. If a person keeps or harbors any vicious animal in the city, the chief of police or designee may direct the animal to be removed. If said animal remains in the city after notice to remove the same has been given to the owner by the chief of police, said animal shall be picked up by a peace officer or community service officer and destroyed as provided herein. Failure to remove a vicious animal when ordered to do so by the chief of police is a simple misdemeanor. I have a few pictures of where the attack on the 12-year-old took place. Sorry, did you already shut it down? This is the backyard, number 2. Number 3, and that is not the dog that's in question. Number 4, and number 5. Okay, thank you. I have our CSO officer, Jeff Williams, here that can answer any questions about how he conducted his investigation. I do believe you were provided copies of his reports, which are pretty detailed. But if you have any questions for Jeff, you're more than welcome to ask him. Jeff, can you come on up if you have any questions for Jeff? Any questions for Jeff?
Yeah. Officer, we had a similar situation that came up within the last year, and I'd like to ask you, I guess, from your expert standpoint, what are the similarities and differences of this situation?
The difference in this case is the dog was in a backyard, confined in a backyard, and so it wasn't running loose like the other incident. And so that's the big difference on this from compared to the last case.
And then one follow-up question. The last incident was of a bike passing, and it seemed to kind of go by where the dog was. And the chief just mentioned that this one, the language is something like pursued the boy. Is that correct?
Yes, it escaped the back door of the residence, which is the fenced-in backyard, and pursued the boy that was playing in the backyard playing basketball.
Thank you.
Okay, I think, Chief, this is a hearing and there are people that want to address the council, so let's hear from them. And then we'll close the hearing and let the council debate the issue.
Okay, I would call Mr. Robert Miller. That'd be the victim's father.
Hello. I just want to say that these guys, they had a fence in their yard. When this happened, they had the proper precautions and it still happened. My son didn't break into their yard, that he was invited. The mother of the child and the child knew that he was there. They were playing basketball. They weren't doing anything wrong. I was told today that they put up a bigger fence, that's not going to help because they already had the precautions in place. They just didn't, they got complacent.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
No, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to address this particular item?
Pictures, packets.
What you want them to see?
Yes. And the council members said there 5.
Would you start by giving us your name and address, please, for the record?
My name is David Rowland. I live at 516 North Benton, Ottumwa, Iowa.
Go ahead.
The incident that happened, a very unfortunate incident. This is my dog's first case that's ever happened. We're very sorry that the injuries happened. The medical bills are being taken care of. We've put up a little over a $2,000 6-foot tall privacy fence, double locked on the back so nobody can get in. The boy was invited in, but only after peer pressuring my son to play basketball. When they got done with their hoops, my son asked him to leave the yard and he refused. My wife come back in from taking the trash out. The dog slipped past her and grabbed a hold of the boy after he screamed and yelled and was flapping his arms.
Anything else you want to add?
Just that,
inform the council of anything you think is important.
yeah, we're law-abiding taxpayers. We're never in any trouble. We've never had any problems with the law. And if we can't have our family member back, we're taking our money elsewhere.
Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to address this issue? Yes, sir. Come on. Excuse me. Come on up.
Hi. This dog is not
Would you
vicious.
start with your name and address, please?
Karen Ferguson, 1316 East Mary Street, Trailer 7, Ottumwa, Iowa. This dog helped my husband recover from 13 strokes, and if that's unbelievable to you, you ask him, except that he is back to driving a semi now. This dog is important to all of us in the family, as you can see from those pictures, and the reason I'm not in any of the pictures is because I took a lot of them. Those are pictures that span over years. The one picture of my youngest grandson with the little wiener dog, that's after the incident happened, and he was so worried about his friend, and he was so worried about his dog that he was laying on the sofa holding this other dog crying. He felt like it was his fault, and he still does today because he bowed to peer pressure. He has been attacked at school over this because the other child has told stories that aren't quite true. He's changed his story since the incident, and I don't know why. But kids will be kids. My grandson was dragged out of his seat by a mutual friend of theirs and asked why he let his dog bite this kid. He didn't let him. He tried to stop it. He tried to get the kid to leave the yard before the dog ever got out. But the kid refused 5 times. And the kid, Keanu, told me this. So I don't know what else to say except that if you put this dog out of the city, we're all going to leave. We have to. And I don't want to leave this city. My family's been here since the 1800s. It's just ridiculous. And they've done all the safeguards that they can. There is papers there from the vet that says that this dog's behavior is normal. They had no problems with her out there at the vet. It's just she was a rescue dog and she was abused. And we got her as a puppy. And the woman that abused her is the same one that that the city charged with beating a dog with a vacuum sweeper tube. So anytime anybody that she doesn't consider a friend raises their hands, she assumes she's going to be attacked, and that's unfortunate. She doesn't do it with us. She trusts us, she loves us, and as the vet said, she protects us. So if there's any screaming and yelling, which happened that day, or any flapping of the arms, you don't know what she'll do. Now we've figured out we have to have a taller fence with a lock inside the fence, a heavy-duty gate latch and locked that mom and dad only have the key to. And then no kids are going to get in unless they come through the house. And they're not going to come through the house. It won't happen. So there's no risk. None of the meters are inside. We've had repairmen, metermen, CenturyLink, everybody else in that house doing repairs, and never has anybody been bitten. Because we do take precautions, not because she's vicious, but because she is protective. You want to live in that neighborhood without a protective dog? Come on up, there's a house for sale, because they have to take their dog out of town. A town that their ancestors have lived in since the 1800s. And it's not right when this dog is so loving and we can take better precautions. We didn't think of it before. And I'm sorry that we didn't. I love Keanu. I love him. And so does his little buddy. In fact, I should have shown you a picture of him and Evan and Keanu, because they've always said Bubby's forever, and now it's no Bubby's left. And because of an unfortunate latch on a door that's been fixed, plus all the other precautions put in place. The basketball hoop's going. There's not going to be anybody climbing over the fence. They can't. It's too tall. There's no trespassing signs. We will do anything to be able to keep this dog at least in town, in their home, until they can find a place to move. They can't just move in a week. They can't just move in 2 weeks. It's not possible. And it's not fair to put a dog down. And the vet even said, I cannot believe that anybody would ever tell you that they'd want that dog put down, which is exactly what Keanu's dad did. And I understand that's his child. But don't let him come up there anymore. I understand that. I just want some kind of lenience here where they have time to fix their house up and sell it. And then let the dog live with them, because she is heartbroken being at the vet. She loves all the people, all the techs. I go out and visit her. That's how much I love her, and I can't stand to see her in jail. It's like one of my grandchildren being in jail. And I've delivered newspapers, and I've delivered to places where there's vicious dogs. And I know somebody that's sitting in here that I delivered a paper to their house, and I won't say who it is. And every day I had to hurry up and jam the paper into the mailbox or the dog would bite me. But they had that dog for a reason, and that's to protect their property. And I understand that. I don't go where I'm told, no, we can't go in the backyard. No, we can't do this. You know, you got to teach your kids too. And we're in the process of training this dog because we have since figured out that if we show any anxiety, she feels it. She thinks we're under attack. So we have to keep our cool around her. And David's the only one that does that. And it wouldn't have happened if David was in the backyard. It wouldn't have. So the rest of us are training with the dog and learning to handle her besides all the precautions. The boys can't even get out the fence to go around to the front of the house to see their friends now because it's locked. And there's no way they can jimmy the lock. They have no access to keys. The keys go with mom and dad. And that's all we can ask is, you know, if nothing else, give them time with her to train her. Give them time with her to fix her house up, and we'll gladly leave this city if that's what you people want, but this is my home. It's always been my home.
Thank you, Karen. Is there anyone else?
My name is Kayla Rowland, and I live at 516 North Benton Street. Sorry. That's okay. I'm short. I was a witness to what happened. I was the one that took the trash out, and the dog got out. She snuck out and bit Keanu. He told his dad that I was out there talking to them for 10, 15 minutes. I was not. I walked out the door, went to take the trash out. On my way back, they said hi to me, and I was trying to get in the house because I had supper cooking for our family. When she slipped out the door, yes, she ran towards him, and yes, she bit him. But this kid, he's not telling the full story. I just ask that you have mercy on our family, because not only has she went through my dad's 13 strokes, she also went through 8 years of depression with me. She comforted me and licked my tears when I would come home from a horrible job for 8 years. She slept with my husband on his pillow like a human under the blanket because she knew that he was hurting too. Because when you go through depression, you drag your whole entire family through it as well. Not by your choice or their choice, but you just drag them right through the mud with you. And I just ask, please, just have mercy on us. I mean, we will do whatever it takes to keep Poochie. And that gate is double locked. It has 2 locks on it, not just one. And we have pictures showing that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Last call. Is there any other comments, Chief, you want to make before we?
Well, I guess if the council does consider that we allow this dog to stay in town, I guess after conversations we had after our last incident where we had the dog hearing where the dog had attacked another person, I would entertain an agreement maybe with our city attorney that if this dog is allowed, my recommendation is that it is not allowed. However, if the council would decide to allow the dog to stay in town, we have an agreement. If the dog's ever caught outside the house, if we ever pick it up again, it's immediately removed, detained, something like that. So I just want to throw that out for you. Also, they talked about their fence. I did drive by the house this evening and inspected their fence from the alleyway. The fence does look adequate to contain a dog. It is, I believe, a 6-foot fence, and it is not the same fence in the pictures. It's now a wooden fence. It's about 6 foot high. So just so you know that it does look like it would adequately contain the dog.
Okay, this is a public hearing. If there's no one else to address the council, then I'd entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Police Department recommendation is to remove the dog from city limits. Recommendation, approve the Police Department recommendation to remove the dog from city limits.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, are there any questions you want to ask the chief or Jeff Williams? Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate your closing comments, Chief. And I do think when we as a council make these kinds of decisions and set up these types of ordinances, it is with an awful lot of thought. And those bites look so horrible, and I understand from their perspective it's an accident, but the thought of it happening again or with somebody smaller, it's just, how do you justify that? Another question I have a little concerned about is, according, Officer Williams, to your report, I think, the dog also did not have rabies shots, is that correct?
Correct. It had an outdated rabies shots or a rabies vaccination, so it was not up to date on the shots at the time.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I have a question of Officer Williams, probably the best one to answer this. In your experience, when something like this happens, regardless of what we do, has it been in your experience that this dog is prone to do this again?
There have been this research that once a dog bites, they kind of bite more. It's kind of a yes question, but sometimes you just never know. So I can't really specifically say it will bite again, no. Also, it was noted in there too that spoke with the owners of the dog, and they admitted it a couple of years ago. The dog nipped somebody. It was a neighbor kid, I believe, but it was kind of a deal where the kid might have been picking on the dog, and it never was reported to the police or anything like that. And the people that got nipped, left the city, so we couldn't contact them.
I know we passed the ordinance stating just what it states, that they have to be removed, and I don't want to see a set of precedents where every time there's a dog bite that we're going to allow them to make corrective action. That should have been done before. So I guess I don't want to see it get out of hand as far as we're concerned. We passed the ordinance for a purpose. We had a child killed on the south side of Ottumwa a few years back. And that's all I have to say, I guess.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor, I would have one more comment about that. We are following the ordinance, and there's a reason why in the ordinance it says that my decision can be appealed to the city council. So I don't think we're setting any precedent here. This is what this democracy is all about. You can override my decision. And so we're just going by the ordinance, and you'll probably have these come to you in the future. We don't have them come very often. I think I've only had two since, this is my second one since being the chief. So I don't think that we're really setting a precedent here, but we're allowing you to make the decision rather than just one person making the decision. We're allowing 5 people to do it. So.
Yeah, I didn't mean they shouldn't have the appeal process. I think, I agree with you 100%. What I'm saying is if we, every time something like this happens, we allow corrections to be made in hopes that it's going to take care of the problem,
right?
Then I think it could get to where everyone that happens will be saying, yeah, go ahead. That was my only concern. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. This is pretty much just a risk management type situation. We have to look at the risk and what kind of risk are we subjecting the community to. As chief of police, I'm not willing to take that risk. That's why I did the recommendation that the dog be removed. So now I'm pushing it over on you guys to make that decision. Yeah, it's a liability. It's just a matter of whether we want to take on that amount of liability.
Go ahead, Councilman Roll.
I just wanted to follow up on something that Councilman Strebe had asked of Officer Williams. Looking back on the decision that was made a few months back on a prior case when this was brought up, How does the actual injury this time compare to the injury of the last case?
This one was more obviously worse because it bit two different times and actually created enough puncture wounds where it needed to be stitched. So this case actually on the bite was worse than the previous case.
Okay, thank you.
Are you satisfied you had enough information? Okay, let's take the vote then.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Okay, the recommendation is followed.
Resolution number 108, 2017, assessing delinquent refuse collection fees on property taxes. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 108, 2017.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Bob, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor and Council. There's a typo. The dollar amount is actually $1,037.94 at the bottom of the staff summary. But the City Council has approved mandatory refuse collection fees back in 1992. Placing these fees on property taxes has been a very effective tool for us to assist in the collection of those efforts for those that refuse to pay them. A total of 4 properties with delinquent refuse fees totaling $1,037.94, plus an administration fee of $25 for each one is included with this resolution.
Okay, are there any questions for Bob? Pretty straightforward. You have a packet.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a annual presentation.
Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 109, 2017, assessing delinquent sewer collection fees on property taxes. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 109, 2017.
Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Your Honor, again. We have about a dozen residents that we bill sewer fees that are not
I'm
connected
going
to
to interrupt
city
you,
water.
Bob. Amanda tells me we need to have a motion on the floor first. So
Move
is
the
there-
recommendation as
moved.
presented.
Second.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. We have about a dozen residents that we bill sewer fees that are not connected to city water. This resolution allows delinquent fees to be assessed on property taxes, and there are 2 properties that have delinquent sewer fees total $996.85, plus $25 in admin fees for each one.
Any questions for Bob? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Resolution number 113, 2017, a resolution of support for the city of Ottumwa to apply to participate in Alliant Energy's Hometown Rewards Program. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 113, 2017.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation. Go ahead.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Good evening again, Jody. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. City staff and representatives of the community, Make Ottumwa Shine volunteers met with Alliant Energy representatives to discuss Alliant's Hometown Rewards Program. And the program provides funds to communities to develop and implement sustainable energy reduction programs. The funds provided by Alliant Energy are considerable. In fact, if you go through the entire program and you have your reward at the end of it, there's over $200,000 worth of funds that Alliant will expend over a 2-year period on this. And staff and a steering committee will be asked to make a 2-year time commitment to the project. We would, once the community is accepted into this program, then there would be 8 to 12 members of the community that would serve on the steering committee. And we would, we believe that this is a good program and we would like to see the city participate in it.
Any questions for Jody?
Mr. Mayor, I just had one question. My apologies, Jody, if I wasn't listening closely enough. If my memory serves me correctly, I believe it's an energy savings cumulative over a 2-year period. Is that 8%?
I don't know what that percentage is. That sounds right.
Yeah, I think it is. Just one of the items that I know Jody and I have corresponded on, and that is if the city does not reach that 8% threshold proportionally, we would still receive the benefits commensurate with whatever percentage we read. I commend Jody for doing a lot of work on it. I think it's a very good program. I just want to make the point that even if we don't reach that 8%, it doesn't mean we fall out of the program. Thank you, Mayor.
Good clarification, Andy. Thank you. Any other questions for Jody? And you're going to find a number of volunteers to staff the committee, and
We'll be reaching out to the community and attempting to find kind of a broad-based group of volunteers from, small business to industry to schools and government participation.
very good. Any other questions? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Resolution number 118, 2017, approving a subordination agreement between the City of Ottumwa, Nation Star Mortgage, and Hubbard and Georgia C. Perkins. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 118, 2017.
Is there a motion? Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jody.
The Perkins have a local housing rehab loan with the city, and they have a mortgage on their house that they wish to refinance for a lower interest rate. And their mortgage company requires that the city, our city loan be in the second position, and that's what this will do. If the council approves this resolution, then we'll prepare some mortgage paperwork for the Perkinses and their mortgage company to sign.
Any questions for Jody?
I got a quick question.
Go ahead, Matt.
They basically, did we have a program where they were able to come and get a loan from the city to
Yes.
fix it there? Do you know what the balance is on that?
It's about $7,200.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Unless somebody else does.
Go ahead, Matt.
When this says the mortgage company requires that city's loan be in second position, does that just mean that the primary, the first loan to the mortgage company will be taken care of before we do?
If the house would be sold, if the property would be sold, then the primary mortgage will be paid off, and then the secondary mortgage will be paid. And I suppose if there was a third one, it would be paid also. This house does have substantial value, and so there's no reason to believe that the city's mortgage will be in jeopardy of not being paid.
Just real quick, and they've made good payments all along to the city, and they've been good stewards of the loan, so.
They have. They did have some issues starting in about 2014 because they were in a traffic accident. And so they were injured and had some difficulties, but they've made arrangements to have automatic electronic deduction and make their payment that way instead of depending upon somebody to write a check and send to the city.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolution number 89, 2017, approving the final plat of Grooms Birchwood subdivision and rescinding resolution number 286, 2016. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 89, 2017.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second. Good evening. This is Kevin Flanagan, our senior planner. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Council will recall, hopefully, recently we did look at Grooms Birchwood subdivision before, and this is a situation where it's within our 1 mile extra jurisdictional radius of the city. And the property owner wanted to take 4 pieces of property and combine them into one piece. The owner, however, did not record said plat and has come back at this point with another idea of the use for the property where the 4 different lots would be combined now into 2 lots. And on the second lot, that would not be the homestead lot. One lot would be the homestead, and the other lot where prior, if you recall, there was going to be a barn or a shop type structure at that location. Currently now, the plan would be to put a duplex. As I understand it, this would require a special use or conditional use permit from the county. I do believe, or at least my report from staff on a county level is that there is some level of approval for that, although that hasn't happened yet. We need to take our action first, obviously. But now the owner has brought back a new plat that has those 4 lots combined into 2. Again, this is in our extraterritorial area outside the city limits within 1 mile jurisdiction. But I would entertain any questions about the plat.
Okay.
Your Honor, I got a question.
Go ahead, Matt.
This keeps coming back, and we keep being told we have no jurisdiction here to alter the final plans of this. So it just seems to me kind of, I don't know, ridiculous. We keep coming up and we're having to approve something we don't have any say over.
Yeah.
Is that something and I know we went through this first time, but now that's just my opinion. My question is, that probably hasn't changed any. That's the same thing we're dealing with now, only that the proposal for the plat has changed now to include 4 parcels now instead of 1.
Yes, instead of 4 into 1, we're talking 4 into 2. And because we brought this situation before our public processes before, and we entertained a review by the Planning Commission, we felt it was appropriate to do so again.
And they recommended approval of this May 1st?
Yes, they did.
Councilman Strebe?
I guess I echo what Matt's saying, and, I would want to be sure about the approval from the county since it's based in the county. But I guess I'm asking why, just because it wasn't recorded, why this has now been refigured or reconfigured into 2 parcels versus 1, what the differences are between 2 and 1 and 4, and what this really, what's the gist of this decision?
I think that the owner just felt like it may, or at least my impression is that the owner felt like it was a better idea to locate that facility that had prior been planned at the location that's been graded there above the pond, if you recall. I think he just felt like it was a better idea to move that to a different location, a different property. This is a lesser use. I think we'd probably see the, I'm just estimating, but or guesstimating, but I do believe that the citizens would probably be a little more happy with this. But my indication was just that the owner felt like it'd be a better idea to do that more intensive structure at a different location. And so he just decided to not record that plat, instead do a new plat that you see. Of course, it's basically splitting that 4-acre piece of property right about down the middle and creating what is a homestead where he will be living. And then this pad that exists today would be used to construct a duplex that would be offered for rent, I'm assuming.
Not to be facetious, but if that individual chose to break that up into 3 parcels of 1 1/3 acres, then he could choose not to record it again, and this would come up for another decision?
The property owner could choose to make a different decision. Yes, if he did not record, he could come back as literally as many times, I guess, as he would wish for your consideration.
Thank you.
Legally, but that would be quite odd.
Thank you.
Councilman Myers? Yeah, well, certainly I agree with Councilman Stalby and Strebe. And your last point, Victor, it's kind of like, Kevin, and I know you can't answer it, but did the person not record the plat in the first place? Because, by the way, I'm offering something that seems more abrasive, but I'll come back and then I'll offer another one. And so it's kind of like, is there a game going on here? But because we can't do anything about it, that'll be up to the county, I guess.
I would posit that there was not necessarily a Machiavellian approach to it or anything like that. I do understand where you're going, and that can happen. I don't think that's the case here, as I do believe that the owner will be coming forward with a request for a city lot at some time in the future regarding what is the installation that was going to occur prior. So because I'm privy to that information, but because of activities that have been going on an administration level, I can't expound on that at this point because nothing's official. But it's my impression that the change was more organic and not a pre-planned initiative.
Thank you. That helps that you shared something you can't share, but thank you.
In a very general fashion, though, with no specificity.
Okay. Any other questions? Matt?
Round 2. Before we vote, could we get a, maybe from Joni, could you tell us once again, I know you did this the first time, but this is so confusing because nothing we vote on tonight is going to have any difference. But we still have to do it. Can you tell us why we're doing that again and why we haven't moved off of this and got this out of our code?
Well, there's a couple of different issues here. One, state law, and state law gives a city the right to make recommendations, but they can't force those recommendations on somebody doing a subdivision. So that's one issue here. Even if he had recorded the subdivision, he could come back in and redo another one at some point down the road.
Yeah.
So the fact that he didn't go ahead and record it just saved him a little bit of recording fees, but he could always come back and redo that. But it's a state law that we're following, and there are times when, and maybe this is one of those where we presented a forum for the neighbors to talk about this to council, and he might have decided to go back and rethink what he did or what he was proposing to do.
It is possible there's a catalyst type effect to that. I'm not sure, but it is possible.
But it's state law that we're following.
Kevin, you said this is it's less intensive.
Yes.
So it would be, so like you said, the residents that were here in line to here and had a petition in front of us last time would probably be more accepting of these plans due to the fact that it's less intensive.
I do not have a direct report from any of the people adjacent, but I would think so, yes, because of course you're not going to have the presence of heavy equipment and a situation like that. And also, I would as well point out that in our documentation, in our resolution, that we do also have some tenets in there regarding city infrastructure being, or the infrastructure being brought up to city standards if any annexation attempt were to be made in the future. So as far as covering the bases on the city side of it, we're doing that as well in a similar manner that we did before.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Ready to vote? Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Ordinance number 3115, 2017, amending the Code of Ordinances, Municipal Code of the City of Ottumwa, Iowa, by changing the zoning classification on property located at 1321 Asbury from R1 Single Family Residential Low Density to R5 Multifamily Residential High Density. Recommendation passed the second consideration of ordinance number 3115, 2017.
Is there a motion? Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would remind everyone that what we're speaking about, of course, is from an R1 to an R5, 63 units, 12 of which currently are estimated to be market rate. We will also see an application with this project. If we were to pass it through, we will see an application for this project for our December LMI tax credits application, much as we did recently for the credits application that we were rewarded with the Washington school property, the old Washington school property. Perhaps workforce housing tax credits included in this app as well. And also that the other aspect of this is that there's a 5-year, the Planning Commission wished to see a 5-year initial term of during which the property owner had a chance to make what would be substantive action toward the development, with the anticipation that if we don't get tax credits in the first year, typically the developer will tend to keep applying every year in the cycles that occur in December. And we find out then in March whether or not we receive those credits. So this could be an application that goes back a couple of years. So we gave this 5-year initial term for that reason, after which the developer, if they do not receive the credits, will be coming back to the Planning Commission for an update. But I would love to entertain any questions that you might have about the development.
Mark?
So I'm gonna re-ask a question that I asked at the last meeting that this was brought up in. So pardon my redundancy. Have you spoken with the neighbors about this project?
I've not heard from any neighbors directly about this project.
Okay, well,
save one. I should say one. I did speak with one neighbor directly.
Okay.
And
so then I will have the privilege of communicating to the council and to the audience as to what the neighbors think about this. They're vehemently against it, and they fear that this will have a negative impact on their property values. Moreover, what they have an issue with is they feel that since the city hasn't approached them about it, there's a strong feeling from the neighborhood that this is being forced down their throats without them having a say in the matter. And you know, I don't say that lightly because I know we have a big housing issue here in the city, and it almost sounds hypocritical for me to say that I'm against this, but I'm pro housing, but I'm not. What I do believe, however, though, is we have to be mindful of what the neighborhoods that we put multi-residential units in, what kind of impact that's going to have on that neighborhood. And I don't see that we as a city are doing our due diligence and going around to that neighborhood and seeing how they feel the impact is going to be. So I guess that's what I have to say about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any other questions or comments? Yes, please.
Bob?
Councilman Myers? Yeah, Kevin, I want to say like Mark, well, maybe not in the sense that I know exactly how he feels about it, but I've asked you several times, and I want to go back to the project on Washington Street and ask you, because the one you just mentioned, there are 63 units, 12 of which are market rate. That's not very many market rate, and I understand the laws and everything, but then you're indicating that the rest would be senior citizen availability as well as workforce. Well, you've assured me that one of the things we're going to look at with a lot of our derelict housing and housing that is substandard that some of these categories maybe fit into right now, that we're going to clean those up, and so this kind of housing is needed. Well, so supposedly the first step was the Washington development, and yet before we even see how that is affected through doing away with some of the other inferior housing, here we're looking at another project. And
Yes.
so my question out of that, though, is were the percentages the same on Washington as far as how many would be market rate and how many would?
They're a little bit different. There's a little bit greater percentage of market rate in this one. I think we had 5 out of 52 in the Washington development, and there's estimated 12 of 63 here too. This site, you know, our numbers could go down on both levels of a maximum, as well as what number of that would, in other words, it go from 63 to maybe 58, then it would drop from 12. These are estimates currently based on the plans and the ideas of how the development will be able to be done. Stormwater has to be a consideration for us here. And we have some calculations to make on that level that could make a difference on our overall numbers in the end. But yeah, a little greater level of market rate in this situation. It's a good location to market rate housing from. Good accessibility to all the amenities that you'd like to see for market rate housing. But essentially, economically speaking, fiscally speaking, without going in for what would be a gap filler with workforce housing credits and otherwise, LMI credits, moderate rate income credits, the project probably would not be viable. And certainly the market has shown us over the term, which is forever, that the property has not been developed, that it's not a desirable piece on the economic development level either. I mean, you're not going to see a retail or in a captured situation like that, you're not going to see retail development or otherwise. So in single family homes, there's just really no way that fiscally this property could produce any kind of development that would be feasible to a developer to do single family on either. So there are limitations that we're addressing here.
And I think that's one of the strong points that I think you've presented. However, I like Councilman Rowe. I'm kind of concerned, and yet I think I've been at this long enough. If we inform neighbors of, you know, potential development and so forth, we at times have to make a decision whether they like it or not, because a lot of situations end up, yeah, it's a good idea, but not in my neighborhood, and we're aware of that.
Yes.
We're aware of that, but do we as a city need to do a better job of at least going around to like that neighborhood like Mark did and at least let them voice their their concerns, or is that just up to the developer? How does that work?
You know, it's an interesting question, and I'm not chagrined. Rather, I'm pleased that you did go around and do that, because I think essentially that is a political role, if you will. In this situation, we have performed no differently than we would in any other, or that I have any other. We followed our standard procedures for notification. We held our planning
Would you
meeting.
explain what is the standard procedure for notification?
Well, typically we're going to notify neighbors within 200 feet around, that kind of thing. We're going to send out our mailings. We're going to make our postings in public notice to have our planning meeting.
So there's plenty of opportunity for either neighbors or the surrounding community and the public in general to respond.
Yes, and we have we feel like I certainly do, and of course the state would as well. The state demands we have 3 readings. So we would have had 1 planning commission meeting and 3 readings, 4 different public meetings with announcements in our official arm before we had come to a final decision on the matter. I don't think it's a bad idea in some instances, whether Larry was doing a larger construction project or we were doing some kind of development initiative on a piece of property, that we would go out and have a meeting maybe in the area, like the city has been doing in areas around the city to gather public input. Maybe not a bad idea to do that on these development pieces in the area. Don't have anything against that. I have done something like that for construction projects, as Larry has, I'm sure too, but haven't done that for a development project. Usually you do that, you make that sausage in public, as we're doing now and today. I would wonder how many of the quality of life, either way, that's not the statement I'm making, but I wonder how many people that live around that block, all 4 corners, how many of those people are owners versus renters. And I don't think it's uncommon for people to say, well, this development, and this is where the NIMBY that you mentioned often comes from. My goodness, this development is going to have a negative impact on my property. And I've had situations on a planning deal where both groups of people were saying that, but the negative opinion was different. One guy was, my gosh, this is going to lower my property value. The other guy was like, this is going to make my taxes outrageous because it's going to raise my property. And 9 times out of 10, when you build a brand new $12 million apartment complex on a piece of green space, it's going to raise the property values around it. So I think that can be perceived as a negative impact. But as far as building a $12 million brand new apartment complex next to a single family home that was most likely built in 1932 and has not been overhauled to a 120% level, I doubt very seriously that's going to lower someone's property taxes if that was their concern. I could assure that it's not going to cause a massive lowering of a property tax or property value, I should say. But it could cause for those property taxes to go up slightly because the property was worth more money. That would be more true, in my opinion, in my experience. Educated guess here, but that would be more true probably for the single row that is the trapped transition row of housing than it would be for those behind, because you're seeing continuity and consistency in the housing stock that is behind our development going southward. It's R1, solid blocks of R1. Above there, you've got one R1 block that's caught between commercial and what is now going to be commercial as well. So that property value will increase, and the natural tendency is for that property to be, turned in a certain direction over a long-term development level.
Mr.
I'd like to
Mayor.
recognize, go ahead, Andy.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Sorry for that. But I think we need to go back to the basis of the question, and that is, and it's a point well taken, and that is very simply whether or not staff is canvassing the area and trying to get opinions from the affected property owners. And I think that's a good idea to pursue. Whether or not we would enfold that, say, in a ordinance or resolution, it's certainly something that can be done. And that is, staff would commit themselves not only to noticing for meetings such as this on these particular types of housing, particularly those that are seeking, whether you call it workforce or low-income housing credits, that staff would be, let's just say, charged with the task of canvassing the neighborhood and finding out from as many people as possible. I think that's, quite frankly, a wise suggestion. I think it's something that we we should pursue if council so desires.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
Just one follow-up question. You know, I remember sitting through a presentation not too long ago with Blackbird about the St. Joseph property. And in discussion with that, I think everybody that was in the room was the important issue that they were trying to take away from that was what is going to be a good fit for the neighborhood. It wasn't, you know, we got to track the land here. We need to do something with it to fill it up, which is pretty much what you just stated. So I guess, can you tell me what the difference is between the north side of town where the fit for the neighborhood is the most important to over here by the mall area where filling up the land is the most important issue?
To me, well, as a planner, you have to look at the area, the classification of the area, the direction of the growth in the area, all of those academic concerns that are with pieces of property. And as we said the other night, we have around 20 acres of developable property retail-wise. This is not one of those. But you want proper use of property to occur. And in this area, because of that transitional nature, I'm giving you the recommendation that I feel like that this is the proper use of this property because the market's made its decision on the retail capacity of it or effectiveness of it, and that was a negative. Single-family developers have made the decision based on their market overview of it, and that was a negative. But what mostly drives this is the fact that it is that transitional point where there's just that one row of single family between what is one of our most intensive districts that's not an industrial district, and that this property has laid fallow for so long, and that if that row of houses weren't there, or if it is there, this is an excellent piece of property for a limited development of multifamily in a market rate or moderate rate fashion, because it's the location of it leans itself towards the kind of folks that we're going to see go into those housing complexes, more young, more cosmopolitan, or more senior, so that they can take advantage of those close proximity of those personal amenities as well as public amenities. So that's what's driving my recommendation. Now, you have what is a political concern, and there's no doubt about that. And there's also no doubt that this isn't the first or the last time that you're going to face a decision like this. And we always have to weigh, we're always having to weigh the people who live there now and the best interest of the community. And in many cases, with developments such as this, around 50 units, I've faced what can be some initial negative feelings from the folks who live in land that turned into positive feelings later when they realized exactly what was going to be built. And so that sometimes that plays into it. What are the feelings or the interpretations of what's going to be built by folks? And we've tried to make that clear as well in the processes that we have and we normally use. That's about the best I can put, but I don't think there's a difference. There's not a class-based decision that's being made here. It's an academic decision. It's a planning decision, and it's based on what is the best evidence we have of where the area is going and all the other considerations that tend to go into the mix when you're talking about a recommendation on a planning level or rezoning.
Thank you.
Okay, have you had a chance to air everything that's on your mind? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are you ready to vote? Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
No.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
No.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ordinance number 3118, 2017, amending Chapter 25, Public Offenses of the Municipal Code of the City of Ottumwa, Iowa, by repealing Section 2564 and enacting a substitute in lieu thereof, allowing the usage of fireworks within the city limits. Recommendation A, pass the first consideration of ordinance number 3118, 2017.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
I believe before we get into this, Joni, we did have one person that wanted to address item. Rick McClure.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor, council members. Rick McClure, 405 South Ward on the beautiful south side of Ottumwa. I'm asking you tonight to pass this. Some friends of mine affectionately call me the grandfather of the fireworks bill. I've been pushing for this for years. When I ran for State House in 2012, once the Courier published that was part of my proposal to move forward on allowing the sale and use of fireworks and generating tax revenue for the state. It's like that was in 2012. We finally got our state senator Shelgren to jump on board and introduce a bill in 2013. It's for the same thing. I'm also a U.S. Air Force veteran, 509th Bomb Wing. My specialty was munitions maintenance. I know all about all kinds of things that go boom in the night, both conventional and nuclear. I have extensive training in these things. Fireworks are as much of a part of Americana as the old commercial, baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. The reason for wanting to introduce this bill is for the tax revenue. I mean, face it, guys, we're going to drive across the state lines whether you like it or not. It's like it happens every year, especially being this close to the border. We are losing millions and millions and millions of tax revenue. On the local level, when you have groups that want to apply for a business license to set up their own fireworks stands, whether it be a Boy Scout troop, whether it be a church youth group, or private entrepreneurs, they're obviously going to have to purchase a business license or permit from you. I don't know if they'll have to insure any kind of bonding through the city or not, but the city could use that funding that you generate from tax dollars for maybe splitting that money between police and fire. My idea for at the state level was to split that money between fire departments and veteran services, just because there are a number of veterans that do have PTSD that admittedly this would affect. But like I say, this is as much of a part of Americana as baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. We've got millions and millions of tax dollars waiting to be collected here. What happens when the Bulldogs score a touchdown? We blow off fireworks. What happens when the Cubs win the series? Fireworks. What happens on the 4th of July? Fireworks. What happens New Year's Eve? Even the city shot off fireworks this year. Well, I say that is a big part of celebration as we know it. Please allow those of us that are trained to exercise our right that we have fought and defended this country to serve. I ask you to jump on board with the state of Iowa and pass this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, Joni, we'd like to have you come. We'll get to Keith. You put down item.
I did. I'm confused as to whether I should actually be speaking to item 2 or 3.
You wrote down item 3.
I did, but I didn't actually see item 2.
Okay, well, come on up and identify yourself. We'll.
Thank you.
Good evening, Keith Cavanis, 2851 Oak Meadow Drive, and I'm here to urge you to let the fireworks issue come forward and to approve it. It's impossible to patrol or enforce to start with. As far as I know, and the chief could correct me, I don't think we've ever arrested anybody in this town for shooting off fireworks. And then we all know that it happens every year. So the enforcement of it is almost impossible should you choose not to allow it. But I think it's important that if the majority of the state decided that it was a worthwhile project, then the county, I believe, has gone along with the state enforcement. I think we should do that as a council. So I know that every year people complain about a little noise, but it happens whether you have an ordinance in favor or opposed. So my recommendation is that you follow the recommendation of the state. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. Now, Joni, would you like to give us some background too?
I'd be glad to, Your Honor. As you know, the Iowa legislature did legalize the sale and usage of fireworks within the state. Our ordinance currently bans the use of fireworks in the city limits. The state legislature did allow us to continue to prohibit fireworks private usage in the city limits, or we could go along with the state law and allow it to occur. We have very little regulation ability for the sale. We cannot prohibit the sale of fireworks in the city limits. We are looking at a zoning ordinance to bring to you at the June 6th meeting. And it will go before the Planning Commission on June 5th. There'll be a recommendation made. Currently, if we did nothing on zoning, we would only allow the sale to occur in industrial zones if we did nothing. But if we proceed to allow C2 or CS1, we'd have to make that zoning change. But it does have to go to the Planning Commission first. So that's going to be brought back to you on June 6th. We might also have a recommendation regarding some inspection fees if our fire department is going to be required to go out and inspect these businesses. So with that said, I've prepared two proposed ordinances for you, and the first one that is before you tonight allows the use of fireworks in the city limits. I've made a couple of changes to our ordinance that disallows the use in our city parks or on city property, and we will not allow fireworks to be shot off out of moving vehicles or aimed at individuals. And then I've allowed a simple misdemeanor charge that's kind of similar to what the state charge is for selling fireworks to minors, for shooting off fireworks on somebody else's property or shooting them off in city parks. Otherwise, our citizens would still be able to purchase and use those fireworks as defined by state law. The second ordinance that would be presented later, and you'll have to vote both of them up or down, and that continues to prohibit fireworks in the city limits. So this first ordinance allows it. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Council, yes, Councilman Strebe?
Yeah, I'd like to speak on this for a second and then maybe I'll ask a question, but I've thought about this a lot. I've talked to members of the fire department, and I'm office mates with a retired police officer from Missouri who's sold fireworks, and he's been on the force for over 30 years. And given this some thought, and I really think that if the state has given the go-ahead for fireworks to be sold, that it would be really difficult for us to not say that you can buy them, but you can't let them off. And the main reason for that is this is all new. We can't sit here and use this as a test group and say, well, let's see how it goes, and then we'll decide again in December. Well, we can't decide anything that's going to happen in December if we never see how it goes. I mean, we can't use that rationale that we'll see how the letting off of fireworks goes and use that to base future decisions on their usage if they're never used. With that said, I really think that we need to be aware of the concerns of our citizens. And my idea is that it's allowed, you said limit use, and that's about space, but I just think days. For example, the guy that I spoke with in law enforcement in Missouri, where it's been legal for a long time, they're allowed to be let off from July 1st to the end of July 4th. You know, there's a 3-4 day span in there. So, you know, I would be in favor of something like that because there's going to be too many potential risks. If it gets dry and the land dries up and there's burn bans, that could be dangerous. I'm aware of all the dangers, but I think that there's like a middle ground here somewhere between full scale everybody's tired of fireworks after 2.5 weeks before the 4th of July, and there's a lot of nuisances to citizens. And I would be one of those citizens that would be inconvenienced by that amount of time. So I guess I kind of want to know what we're voting on here and on point A and point B, and if there's a possibility that we can say, yes, I'm for going along with what the state is suggesting as far as sales, but for our city, we can impose a finite range of days within which people can use fireworks. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilman Myers? Yeah, and I like what you're saying, Victor, Councilman Streety, with one inclusion maybe, and that be that we work with the county this time on what days, so that, again, it's not, okay, here, some variation.
Agreed.
And then Joni, I also wondered, would you tell the people, so industrial is industrial, but what is the difference between C2 and CS1?
C2 is commercial. It's a higher zoning area district. C2 is. CS1 is shopping center, commercial shopping centers like Menards and Walmart, South Hy-Vee. The North Hy-Vee is a C2, but the South Hy-Vee, I believe, is a CS1. So that's basically the difference.
Okay, or it may be just the opposite, but it is one or the other. That one allows, as you said, the mall area and Menards area and South Ottumwa, but if we didn't include the other one, then it would not have included, for instance, North Hy-Vee or some of that area.
Yeah, the big thing is the commercial shopping areas. That's the question at this point. The staff recommendation is going to be at least C2 and industrial. And the question is, do we want to include those shopping districts? And that's something staff will be discussing tomorrow, and we'll bring it to the Planning Commission as required, and then to council on the 6th.
Joni, and if I may, my follow-up question then would be the language that's in here, if we approve this and the limits of use, would included in that phrase limits of use be us being able to talk to the county and limit the days in which they were allowed to be let off?
I had visited with one of the supervisors because my recommendation, right now the law says you can shoot them off from June 1st to July 8th and from December 10th to January 3rd from 9 a.m. in the morning till at least 10 p.m. at night. My recommendation was that we limit that.
Yeah.
But the supervisor that I visited with indicated that probably wasn't something that could be supported. Based upon that, because we were looking for some consistency between the county and city. So based upon that, I presented this proposal, and we can certainly look at it at the end of July 8th and see how things went. And if we have lots of complaints about fireworks going off at 9 a.m. in the morning or after 10 at night, council, this ordinance is not written in stone. We can make revisions to it.
We can.
But it might be nice to go through that season and then make a determination
So
prior
you're
to
saying
Christmas.
right now, if we say yes to this, we're saying yes to that whole period of time and during those hours? Or you're saying, yes, we can make revisions to this and say what days and what times they're allowed to be let off?
The ordinance that is before you is June 1 through July 8th.
Okay.
If you want, if you're more interested in having a limitation, I'll need to redraft and bring it back before you. And I could do that by July or by June 6th council meeting.
That would be my interest, but I'm just speaking, on my own behalf. But that would be my interest.
Okay, Councilman Rowe?
A couple of things. I'm still a little bit concerned about the enforcement piece of it. To echo Councilman Streby's thoughts, it's going to be difficult to enforce, and if we don't, in some form or fashion, let it go, then we are kind of putting ourselves up against a wall. I guess where Councilman Strebe and I might differ a little bit is I would support this as it sits for right now, knowing full well that we should at some point, as soon as this first season's over, be putting together a community committee of sorts that would include the chief of police, the fire chief, and interested community members, along with city staff and council, to see if there's a better approach, the errors that we made, and revisit this before the December deadline. That way, the problem that I see right now is we're so far up against the wall with dates, we don't have time to intelligently put together a ordinance that's actually enforceable, that we have meat to. So that would be my suggestion, is to pass as is, and then put together a task force after the fact to see what improvements, if any, need to be made going forward.
Sorry, if I may. I don't disagree with the task force idea. I like that idea. And I agree with the time period too. But I think within 5 weeks, from what I've heard, from my office mate, that the calls that the police and the fire could get during that 5 weeks could keep them quite busy, and possibly, be addressing one of numerous complaints about fireworks or injuries when other issues that come up within the city are taking place. And I think that, also there's a safety factor here. If we just open the floodgates for over 5 weeks for people to let off fireworks day and night, and people get injured, then, that's going to be our decision. So I think if we start with a little moderation and limit the days that it can be used, then maybe we wouldn't have to prohibit them completely thereafter at future times.
Any other comments?
I think both Roe, Myers, and Strebe have some very good points. One question I have, and I asked Monday, we have an area, at least one, and I'm sure there's several more, that's zoned industrial, but it's 95 to 98% homes. Are we going to allow that residential? It's not zoned residential, but are we going to allow that area to sell fireworks? I don't think so. I don't think we should. So how's that going to be addressed?
Your Honor, a couple of the things that we've looked at is that on properties where the allowance would be, that there would be, we've looked at some aspects like on pavement, on paved surfaces only, sales on paved surfaces only. And we've looked at must be related to structure on, so that empty lots couldn't be used. There would have to be a structure on the lot, and the only person that could sell on the lot, for instance, some of the discussions we've had, you may want to weigh in as well, that it would have to be either the owner of the lot or a lease to one other person on the lot. And we have had discussions about CS1, because if we're allowing it in I1s and I2s, because we do have some of the same types of businesses in some of our C2s as we do in our CS1s. You want to add anything to that?
Well, now, Kevin, in an industrial area, if I lived in an industrial area, could I open up my garage and sell them? From
where we've been talking, we wouldn't allow it on residential use lots. I mean, that's been the kinds of the discussions we've been talking about. It'll be a little more limited, like must be a structure on a business type structure on that lot, and paved surfacing and things like that, that would be more restrictive, so that you wouldn't see every home that was in an industrial zoned area under residential use be able to sell.
Mayor, just so we're not here all night, just be clear on that though, Kevin. If they're allowed, if we're talking about the sales in industrial districts, the short answer to that question is yes. The short answer would be if they're going to be allowed in industrial districts, again, the sale of them, that's a three-letter word, YES.
And I might add briefly that the state is going to limit cities from doing much regulation in this area.
So our abilities are limited, but there are abilities, but they're limited.
I think for the record, we should enter the fact that we all received a letter from Jim Jackson. Jim is the chair of the Safety Advisory Board, and he wrote a page letter to the council, and he would not support the idea of allowing fireworks used in the city limits, just so that that's in the record for the city clerk. Okay. Have you had enough questions and discussion, Matt? You look like you want to.
Look like I'm bursting at the seams, doesn't it? No, I just want to give my quick opinion, and just so there's no misunderstanding, I think we know there's a good amount of people that would like to see fireworks let off in the city, and then there's also probably another unheard of, at least from this evening, except for the one gentleman here. There's a lot of people who are worried, scared, of some of the potential safety, risks and stuff like that. So I think we need to hear that voice as well. I do kind of find it funny when the state goes to make laws, they, number one, ram it together, pass the part they like, and then pass the rest of the political part on down to the cities to take care of. It's always humored me in somewhat, and I think this bill here was a rush job, and it does not allow cities nor safety personnel and support staff to sit down and have a good discussion. I'm not so much regulating it, but talking about some safety issues. I know the state law talks about some proposed safety training possibly to come down. Haven't heard anything about that. The fire fee fund that was supposed to be set up to aid cities with law enforcement if they so choose, or fire in the event that there's a fire, we don't know anything about that yet. There's too many unknowns yet. Now, I'm not saying as a council person at this point, I'm opposed to it. I'm not totally opposed to letting people shoot off fireworks. But I'm opposed to the way it was brought down and the way it's laid before us. Now, we've got to act and do something real quick without much thought, and then suffer the repercussions, if there are any, and there may not be. I don't think that's a good way to legislate. I've heard the other council members, and I agree with pretty much everything they've said. I think we needed more time. And again, I'm not opposed to this as in its whole, in the whole issue and the idea of something to keep in mind. The county and the city are two different entities. We want to have good communication, and we want consistency. That's what we saw with the minimum wage ordinance and the law from the state. But yet we have all these cities and counties making up their own rules again. Here we're going to come up with a patchwork of different ways to do this. The county does not have home density numbers, as does a more urban area. Much more homes in the city. A lot more wide open space in the county. I think the county is in excellent shape to fully allow the use of fireworks. If I was a supervisor, I don't think I'd see much issue with that. But in the city, when we have too much, house density, people density, we have a lot of people that do like this, a lot of people that don't. But we have issues we haven't even talked about yet. And that's why I agree with these two council members, or 3 or 4 that I've heard of. We needed more time. And so I can't legislate or give a vote on something and agree with something when it's done this quickly and without any thought. I think it's possible to be done. I think we could probably get to where we all want to be. I just can't yet put my name and attach it to this. Opting out, we know 18 cities so far have. Maybe because they wanted more time. Enforcement. We don't enforce everything we've got on the books now. We can't. We don't have the manpower. So that's not a big surprise. The funny part is, though, that we're going to get calls from people who don't like it. And our police force is going to respond, just like they would if we had an ordinance on the books for them to enforce. So we're really not getting very far talking about enforcement. That really isn't the issue, and we don't need anything else to enforce. So at this point in time, and not take all night, I'm going to have to just give my opinion that until we can sit down and talk about it, which I think we can, and we can make changes, I understand that. I don't think I could just let it see how it rolls with the time frame the state's given us. I'd like to see, like Councilmember Strebe proposed, a much shorter window for usage before signing off on this. So thank you.
Well, we do have a a motion and we have the ordinance as presented tonight, and that's what you're voting on. So I think you either vote it up or vote it down. And if you want the staff to come back with a different recommendation, you can certainly communicate that to Mr. Morris, and we'll take that under advisement. Are you ready to vote?
Mr. Mayor, just one quick
Yes.
question. This may have already been said, but council will need to vote on both ordinances, correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
That's correct.
So obviously I'm in favor of having this amended and brought back to us. So then the vote would obviously have to be no for the full allotment. Or do we need to make a motion to have this amended before we vote on it?
Well, Amanda and I were just talking, you do have another option. That would be to postpone both of these ordinances and let the staff come back with a different recommendation that would have some different windows of time. But I think in all fairness, the items on the agenda are to approve tonight the use of fireworks and to eliminate the ordinance that says it's prohibited to have possession in the city. So let's vote it up or vote it down tonight, and you can tell the staff what you want to do, and we can bring another adjustment back to you later on.
Mr. Mayor, may I just a short?
The time for public comment has been closed, and so if I do that with you, I'll have to do it with anybody else, so I'm going to say no. Any final comments before we?
So what we're doing is, if we agree with Strebe and Councilman Dalby, is vote no, vote it down, and then it'll be brought back.
But we have, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have till June 1st for the state law. I think if we vote, if we vote for to pass, the allowance of it, that's end of it, and then we vote on the other one. But if we don't do something, the state law will take effect and take
That's
precedence
right.
June 1st, and we'll be under state law, which opens those shooting guidelines off for 3 weeks.
That the first ordinance is to allow the usage. Right now on the books, we have an ordinance that's going to be illegal as of June 1st because it prohibits the sale in our community. So we have to make a change to our ordinance. So this first ordinance is to allow
Sale.
allow the sale and use. The second ordinance allows the sale, but prohibits the use. If you vote both of them down, I'll have to get you another proposal to you either for the May 30th meeting or the June 6th meeting.
Mr. Mayor, but the vote, let's start off with my understanding that is the vote as Amanda Blunt pointed out, this can be postponed. So you're having a meeting on the 30th anyway. You have another one on the 6th of June. And it's probably more of a legislative matter at this point then, but would council have the discretion then to not vote on either one of the resolutions this evening and instead postpone that vote? That doesn't create a perfect picture because in addition to that, you still have to make, based on what council is saying, some modifications. But it seems to me it makes some sense at that point to postpone the vote on both ordinances until the 30th of the month.
If I may, I think we're making it way too difficult like we sometimes do. Joni, if I read I-2 correctly, that vote is simply to identify that, yes, we will allow the sale in industrial C2, and then you said staff would talk about possibly including C1.
This ordinance just mentions the zoning. This zoning changes are not being brought before you today.
But it is for the sale.
The only thing that this first ordinance does, it legalizes the sale and usage of fireworks within the state and conforms with what the state law is. That's what the first ordinance proposal today does. If you want to postpone these two ordinances, what I would do is I'd prepare a third option that would have some limitations. So it would be brought back to you possibly on the 30th, and you would have to vote up and down 3 different proposals.
Per Councilman Dalby's thoughts, I would be in favor of postponing these decisions.
I think I would agree. I think I'd be in favor of postponing and having just a little bit more time to talk about it as well.
Until the 30th, yeah. So do we need to make a motion? to
Well,
postpone it?
let's take care of the motion that's on the floor. Are you willing to withdraw that motion?
Councilmember Rowe would have to do that.
I would move to withdraw my motion.
Is the seconder?
Second.
Needed, they just need to withdraw it.
Okay, so the action then is to withdraw the motion that was to vote on item I2 tonight. Postpone that until,
Then I would need a motion to postpone indefinitely with a second and a roll call.
I would make the motion to postpone.
is there a second?
Second.
Postpone indefinitely or until?
Indefinitely, please.
Okay, any questions for Amanda or Joni on this?
So
So we would not take any action on either I2 or I3 tonight?
but we would need to take some form of action if we wanted restrictions by the 1st of June. So that next meeting, we have to vote all three up or down.
May 30th.
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
Are you clear? I'm a little concerned that if this kind of a discussion tonight, if we can't call for a vote and take it, then I'm a little concerned we can't all get together and meet anyway. So how is the outcome going to be any different on the 30th? Well, I think that's the whole purpose of having an open discussion tonight, that you get the flavor of all the citizens, the different council positions, staff recommendation, and then you either vote it up or vote it down. I mean, at some point, that's what you're charged with when you're elected.
If we don't, the state law goes into effect.
That's
in
right.
full force.
That's why a vote right now would do the very thing you're talking about. But I understand. But it would, the one thing would be different is if they come back with a third recommendation that has a different timeline for usage, that would be different than what we have in front of us tonight. Well, I thought I heard the attorney say fairly clearly when we started this, that we would do these votes tonight, and then on the 5th, or 6th, that she would come back with the final proposal. That would be the refined proposal. I thought I heard her say that. Maybe I didn't.
Only on zoning. The zoning, yeah, the zoning issue.
Yeah, we're mixing apples and oranges there. All right.
Yeah.
Couldn't you guys have a work session maybe Thursday night? Schedule that, be a short half-hour session, talk it over, be done with it?
That's always a possibility, Bob. Good suggestion.
Could I, what I had suggested to our supervisor was to limit the usage from June 25th to July 5th and have a 10-day window there and do the same, something similar for December, and then limit it instead of 9 a.m. in the morning, put it at like 4 p.m. in the afternoon to be able to shoot those off. Is that something you guys are interested in?
Could we give you recommendations via email or in person? Because we're talking about sale versus usage. Obviously, the sale would be for that whole amount of time.
Sale, we don't have any
But I would be
say
in
for
favor
that.
of a shorter window, say something like July 1st through July 5th or something like that. And discharge, and with the 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. limitation.
You'd like July 1st through the 5th.
The 5th.
I would not. I want a longer period.
But anyway, there's
Well,
been.
we're not gonna
there's
reach
been
agreement.
a motion to postpone it, so we can fetter out the details of that, but we can give you input, right, Joni, on that?
Yes.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to withdraw and to postpone indefinitely. Are you ready to vote? Please take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
No.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Motion carried. I will need the same type of motion on the next ordinance.
Okay.
To postpone.
Let's
I
go
would-
to item 3, I3.
Ordinance number 3121, 2017, amending Chapter 25, Public Offenses of the Municipal Code of the City of Ottumwa, Iowa by repealing Section 2564 and enacting a substitute in lieu thereof, continuing the prohibition of the use of fireworks in the city limits. Recommendation A, pass the first consideration of ordinance number 3121, 2017.
I would make a motion that we postpone.
Second.
Okay, the motion is to postpone indefinitely the ordinance 3121 to 2017. Any questions or any comments? Take the roll.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
No.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. I guess we'll have lots more discussion. You can talk to other people and you can talk to each other one-on-one. So we'll have another lively discussion on the 30th. Item J in our agenda is communications and petitions. And I just want to take a moment and share a couple of things that were not included in the packet. On May 10th, I did sign a proclamation with Judge Bill Owens and Mary Derby on behalf of the National Drug Court. I don't know if you're aware, but this is the 10th year anniversary for the Drug Court here in Wapello County. It's been an outstanding program and certainly has really done some good work. I think one of the things that we sometimes don't understand, folks who deal with substance abuse issues have a tendency to be chronic users and re-abuse, but the national statistics are that those who complete drug court, over 75% of them never become rearrested, and I think that is just outstanding. So hats off to Judge Owens and Mary for the good work they do. Secondly, I'd like to recognize Mr. Pete Curtis, who's in our engineering department, and tomorrow I think is his last working day. And Pete has been an outstanding surveyor and an engineering staff, and will be missed. He didn't want any public acclamation, but I know the staff took him out for breakfast this morning. Finally, too, I'd like to ask Larry Seals to come up to the front of the table here and receive an award on behalf of the City of Ottumwa. Recently, the American Council of Engineering Companies presented an award to Ottumwa for the outstanding project called the Ottumwa Lagoon Pump Station. And for those of you who've been around a while, this is the very attractive facility right across from Bridgeview as you go into the beach. And it's is that phase 5 of the contract for flood mitigation and so forth. And JEO Consulting Group was the engineering firm that we worked with, and they presented this to us a week ago, and Councilman Myers was with Larry when we got this, so I'd like to present this to Larry and say thank you for our job well done.
Mayor, if I may, I think to Larry's credit also, there was another really neat component about the city and Larry, us receiving that award. The other component being, we were in a position several years ago to not have an engineer on staff, and engineers were pretty expensive and everything. And so Larry came up with an idea of trying to find a young engineer that might work with us for a few years and learn the trade and everything. So just coincidentally, Dan Sturm, who started sewer separation with us and everything, worked with us for 5 years. He was one of the engineers with the JEO staff that was presented. I thought that was really neat. So good job.
Very good. Two other items. This afternoon, the fire department had their annual 10th anniversary of Fire and Ice project sponsored by the Evans Middle School to help finance some fire alarms and other activities, fire education. I stopped just briefly, but it was well attended when I was there. So thank you, Tony, for doing that. Lastly, the first farmers market for the year is going to be held this Thursday. It'll be the first and third Thursdays of the month, and it's going to be held in the 100 block of South Court. So that's a new location, and I think Fred Zessinger from Main Street has worked really hard on getting this up and running, and so we would like to support that. I think then the other thing, we will have a special presentation on the June 20th meeting. Abby Kissling will come and talk about her work both with CVB and also some of the work she's doing with Gene Ratchey on the beach. Fred Zessinger will come and make a presentation on Main Street. And Andy, are we confirmed on the 13th for HDR?
On the 13th, tentatively, we're working on that date to have an update on the facilities plan on the 13th that evening. Larry, when we talk about it, that'd be at 5:30? Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, I think that's all the announcements and the comments. Are there any other comments for the good of the city? Hearing none, I entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you.